Gosh, I hope this will work. Hello. I'm live. Hurrah. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my house. I've just been running from meeting to meeting, so I've just literally got off a Zoom call and went, oh my goodness, it's 1 minute past 6. Polly's here. She's getting up on her sofa. You going on the sofa, Paul? Oh, a bit scruffy back there. Nobody needs to see that. Craig, Gris time, chilled or room temperature. So mine, I had to come home because our internet's not working this afternoon, and it went in the fridge about an hour ago, and then I pulled it out. So I think not too cold, but maybe just cooler than room temperature. If you've had it in the fridge for 3 days, then it probably needs to oh gosh, someone's just pulled up at the gate. Polly's very upset. There's going to be a bit of barking going on. Paul, can you just relax? Hang on a sec, I'll just let her out. Goodness me, Polly. I know, someone's trying to do a delivery, I think. I don't know what's going on. They're just sitting there. Anyway. Hello, Angela. Oh, pork Mirabella. Yum, sweet and sour braised pork with green olives, prunes, and oregano. Sounds delicious. Oh, the dyes are in Phillip Island. Fantastic. Hello, Cotty and John. Hello, Paul and Roz. Room temperature. Karen and Peter's having keyboard issues. Yes, they tell me that's a shame, but they will be able to enjoy listening along anyway. What else? Emily, you did the aged Pinot tasting. No cork taint. Awesome. Yeah, Craig had a tiny bit of cork taint for his Pinot. I'm sorry to hear. Just the two of us then. There had to be cork taint in the tasting somewhere. Oh, hello, Greg and Hayley. Sharpie and Roddy here. Hello, welcome. I feel like, oh goodness. Hello, Sue and Daryl. Lovely to see you. Yeah, no, a tradie's decided to park out the front of our house, so Polly's out there shouting at them at the moment. So we'll just ignore that. All right, Pinot Gris time. 2014 Pinot Gris. Now, I haven't given you guys any real information about this wine, so this is going to be fun. Oh, here we go. The lighting's terrible in here. 2014 Pinot Gris, and I didn't bring my I didn't bring my my special light home, so I'm having to rely on the lighting from around the house, which is not ideal. But anyway, we're just going to have to deal with it. Shell, you forgot to. No, it'll be fine. You don't need it to be too. You don't need this wine to be too cold at all. Hello, Jeff. How are you? Let's get this open. Let's get this in the glass. Wish those people would go away. Here we go. Glass wine. Probably you can't even hear Polly because she's right at the front. Very good exercise for her. Isn't that a gorgeous colour? Angela also noted the colour on this wine. And so 2014, I'm using my Pinot Noir glass. I could have used my Sangiovese glass, but I think with a wine, Pinot Gris, as we've talked about before, but I know that there's some new people who are joining us fairly recently, so probably haven't heard this spiel before. For the rest of you, you can just tune out and have a little sip and a little bit of a taste while I go on about this. Pinot Gris being very closely related, in fact, a mutation of Pinot Noir. I think particularly when it's got some bottle age, it works really, really well in a Pinot Noir glass. You get a lot more of the aromatics coming up and coming through. Hello, Anthony and Brigitte. How are you from the Sunshine Coast? Beautifully presented charcuterie platter. You have to send me a photo. Kate at moorooducestate.com.au. Any and all photos are very much appreciated. We're going to have a little photo competition again one of these days. But tonight, you can just send me the photo just to bring me joy. That would be awesome. So, beautiful colour. 2014. So, this wine is 8 years old. And you might have thought, I don't think I've ever tasted the 2014 Pinot Gris when you open this up. And even if you've been drinking Moorooduc Estate forever and you think that you've drunk all of the Moorooduc Estate wines ever made, You would be correct in believing that you have not tasted the 2014 Moorooduc Estate Pinot Gris before tonight, because this wine was never released. So you guys are the first people to get to taste it. Why did we do that? Is a very good question to ask. Let me have a little sip before I answer that question. It's not because we didn't think it was delicious, but there are a couple of factors about this wine that made us think. We'd been wondering about the bottle aging ability of Pinot Gris for a long time. And 2014, if you remember, was a very small vintage, very small berries, small crop, small berries. So a lot of concentration, but also for Pinot Gris, a lot of phenolics. It was really, really tight. It was very non-expressive when we made it. And we'd had issues with Pinot Gris that we'd made like this previously that people hadn't, and we'd released at the normal time, that people just hadn't understood. That it didn't have a lot of aroma, didn't have a lot of flavour when it was young, really tight, really fine, but also really textural. So those phenolics made the wine, before it kind of had time to develop richness and depth in the bottle, the phenolics made it quite bitter. And without the richness, then that bitterness really kind of stood out. So as a young wine, it was quite a challenging wine. As I say, we only made tiny quantities of it, and we decided when we were looking at it, we thought, do you know what? By the time it was time to release the 14, we had the next vintage ready to go, and we just thought, this wine needs to go down in the museum. We're not even going to try and win people over with it, because it was the French have got a really beautiful term which I love, and the term is joli laid, and it means beautiful ugly. And it's a word that it's sort of a French version of the word handsome, as in handsome used for a woman who has really striking, characterful looks, but not traditionally pretty or not traditionally seen as a great beauty. So this wine for me, when it was young, was very much a joli laid wine. Polly, you got to stop. Shh. Shush, they're gone. Oh, my goodness. Now there's children going past on their bicycles. Just taste amongst yourselves for a minute. I have to let the dog out again. Polly, you're being a pest. Oh, no, you're being a pest. Go on, go outside. Right, wine. Dog's gone again. Busakawa, Japanese for so ugly it's cute. Yeah, absolutely, Shell. So when it was young, it was not a beautiful wine. It was a wine that was quite awkward. It was really tight. It didn't have a lot of fruit expression, and we had a gut feeling this wine was going to do beautiful things, but that we needed to give it time. Let it go into its chrysalis and come out as a beautiful butterfly one of these days. And it's still really tight, even with 8 years age. But it's also, I'm glad that you guys are enjoying it. I think it's delicious too, Sharpie and Rod. And Shell, that buttery character I think is absolutely correct. It's sort of honeyed butter though. Cotty's getting the honey, absolutely. Craig's having it with the deviled eggs. How fantastic. Joan, you've surpassed yourself, obviously. I think it would be fabulous with. So for me, it's very, it's much more in the sort of Italian high-end Pinot Grigio kind of style than the French Alsace style. It's really textural. It's still got that little bitterness, and I think I still think it's handsome rather than pretty or gorgeous or anything like that. I just think it's really pretty structured and pretty awesome. Angela's having it with pre-dinner blue cheese and pear. Yum, that would be beautiful. So blue cheese is really hard to match to wine generally, and a lot of people say blue cheese with vintage port, pretty good. But I think with a wine like this as well, or with the Sauterne sometimes, but with a wine like this, it's not sweet, but it's got a lot of richness, it's got a lot of texture, and it can handle the sort of salty, tangy, slight bitterness of the blue cheese as well. So I think that's I don't know what she's barking at, but she's got herself into quite a state. Can you calm down? Hello. What's going on? What's going on? Hey, come here. It's okay. Kay's having cranberry cheddar and burger without a bun, but veg and chips. Yum. That sounds pretty delicious. So yeah, I just think this is a really surprisingly blue buffalo cheese. Paul and Ross, I don't think I've ever had blue buffalo cheese. That sounds amazing. Yeah, beautiful. And so it's a really unusual wine. As I said, it's a wine that is a bit of a challenge, but you guys have come along on the journey, the Moorooduc Estate Pinot Gris journey, and I decided it was finally ready for you to meet this very special little creature, which is the 2014 Moorooduc Estate Pinot Gris. Shell's having it with prawn spring rolls and garlic fried rice. I think delicious. Yeah, so it's got a lot of colour. It's pretty viscous. It's pretty, and that's Paul and Roz because of that really low crop level, very tiny berries. So a lot of skin to juice ratio. So you're almost getting the texture from the skins, giving the wine an extra weight to it on the palate. And that's what we talk about with the phenolics, but it is quite viscous. It's pretty ripe. It's 14% alcohol, but even at 14% alcohol as a young wine, it didn't have those really obvious pear or quince fruit characters. I think we see a little bit. Hello, Zach and Jack. I didn't use a decanter, but if you're running late and you want to get into it quickly, a decanter could actually be a pretty useful tool with this wine. It's certainly still looking quite tight and youthful, and it's opening up in the glass as we talk. So big glass though, Zach and Jack. So rather than it going down that sort of, there's a little bit of pear there on the nose, but it's got this lovely kind of nutty, savoury kind of a nose to it. It's quite hard to describe, apart from saying all those things about it being delicious and handsome and unusual. There is a honey note there, but it's kind of like wild honey or maybe even like a leatherwood honey or something. It's kind of got that savoury sort of almost beeswaxy kind of note to it that takes it away from just being sweet and floral and takes it into a more savoury kind of darker, I think more interesting place. There's not really a lot of quince there yet. I think that will come with this wine. It's still going to keep evolving and changing with time in the cellar. So it's kind of, I think this is a good time for us to be having a first look at it. Whereas most people would be thinking that a 2014 Pinot Gris, we would be sort of looking at the end of that and hoping that it was still hanging on in there. But it's such a baby still. It's a little bit of a monster that just needs all that time. And you can see how it's if you give it a good swirl and then smell it again, the honey notes are starting to come up more as it sort of reacts with the air. Still getting that sort of cashew nut and remember a couple of weeks ago when I was in Sydney, I had honeyed cashew nuts, and I think that would probably go quite well with this one because that's what the aroma reminds me of. Cotty, John says it reminds him of your mead, savoury and sweet. Yeah, it's got some really lovely lifted sort of caramelised kind of notes, but it's also really savoury. Like there's almost like a mixed grain kind of a cracker or a wholemeal bread kind of a note to it as well, which I think is really intriguing that you don't often see in Pinot Gris. But I think remembering again that the way we make our Pinot Gris at Moorooduc is fairly non-traditional for Pinot Gris, particularly when we talk about Pinot Gris and Pinot Grigios in this country. So just running through it again, we basically use the same winemaking technique as we do for Chardonnay. The grapes get hand-picked and the whole bunches go into the press. Hello, Deb and Zoe. Good to see you. I got a little message from you, but I didn't have... Oh, Zoe and Deb are having trouble getting on. Thank you for texting me anyway. I think certainly at Moorooduc, the tower that provides the internet is not working, so that could also be affecting your internet, Deb. I don't know whether you get your signal from the same place as we do at Moorooduc, but that's why I'm home tonight. What was I saying? I've lost my track. I'll have another sip of the wine. I'm sure it'll come back. Ugh. Winemaking, whole bunch pressed. It goes into old oak. It's barrel fermented, but we don't add any yeast. We rely on the natural yeasts that come in. And again, I keep going on about these tiny berries that we had. Thank you, Kay. These tiny berries that we had in 2014. So lots of skin to juice ratio. So even pressing it quite gently in the press, we'll get those phenolics coming from the skin and that savouriness and that bitterness that you see on the back palate of the wine. Barrel fermented and then topped up and left in barrel unsulfured for about 8 months. A natural malo during that time of time in the barrel, and I think that time in the barrel and the phenolics in the wine, all those things has kind of like pulled it all together really tightly, and as I say before, the colour has developed in the bottle. When we first made it, it didn't have nearly that much colour. It certainly didn't have as much perfume. It had the texture, but not the weight on the palate. So you could see that it was gonna get there. But any normal person, because not many people have had the opportunity to taste the Moorooduc Estate Pinot Gris with significant bottle age, any normal person would just have thought, oh, this is just not a very expressive wine. But we know you just got to give it time. I'm going to take my jumper off. It's a bit warm in here now. Woo! Oh, no. Mucked up the hair. So I think, as I said to you before, that it's got a very sort of Italian accent to it, which is why I thought it could work really nicely with Asian flavours, and I'm really glad to hear that Shell and Andrew have gone down the prawn spring rolls and the garlic fried rice, because I think that would be delicious with this wine. But I think if you're a fan of a good antipasto platter, and I'm talking multiple types of cured meat, maybe pork, maybe duck, maybe a bit of bresaola, that kind of thing. I'm talking about a couple of different cheeses. A lot of you have said you're having blue cheese tonight, which I think is really interesting and very apt with this wine. But also a wash-rind, a soft scented wash-rind cheese would be fabulous with this. Quite a ripe brie or something like that would also be terrific with this wine. But also adding into that those vinegary vegetable flavours that you often get in a big Italian antipasto. So things like semi-dried tomatoes, things like grilled and olive oil marinated eggplant slices and red capsicum and olives and all of those kind of flavours. I think if you went so far as to go down that path, the only thing that I think is going to be really tricky as a wine and food match, and we'll talk about why in a moment, is those little marinated artichoke hearts, which I adore, which are awful with almost all wine. And it's interesting because of a particular compound in artichokes, it makes them really hard to match to wine. They tend to make wine taste sort of bitter and metallic in the same way that blue cheese makes a lot of wines, particularly red wines, taste bitter and metallic. But I just have a little hunch that this might work quite well with artichokes because it's got that richness, it's got that lusciousness, but it's also got its own bitterness that kind of will actually kind of butt heads with the artichokes in an interesting and I think possibly quite positive way. So I don't know if anyone's got artichokes on the charcuterie platter tonight. If you have, I'd be really interested to know how they go. And I will have to do the experiment down the track one of these days. Jerusalem artichokes. I know Cotty and John have done the Jerusalem artichoke tart in the past with other Pinot Gris that we've made. I think that could work also really well with this wine because it's got enough weight and richness and depth to handle those sort of complex vegetable flavours. Emily, that sounds really interesting. Kevin's having manchego. You're having dairy-free coconut-based cheese. How is the dairy-free coconut-based cheese going with this wine? Because, again, I know I'm often a little scathing about dairy-free cheese substitutes, but I reckon the little bit of coconut oil flavour could work really nicely with this wine. So that would actually be another wine and food combo that I'd really love to try. Craig, you're very rude. Not everyone can eat dairy, Craig, okay? Drowning the cheese in caramelised onion relish. So I think that would be even better because I think caramelised onion, even good homemade pickled onions with any kind of cheese would work really well with this wine because it's got enough weight to. But the caramelized onion particularly because of the sweetness and the richness of caramelized onion. That's something that we need to do down the track. I'll think of the next appropriate wine, but we'll do a Pissaladière as the weather gets a bit warmer, and I'll get you all to when we're all on summer holidays or something, so we've got time to do some cooking and stuff. But a Pissaladière with lots of caramelized onion on top is pretty awesome with something like a white Pinot Gris or a Pinot Gris on skins. Sonia, hello, welcome. Got the prawn dumpling thing happening. It's okay, but the pear's better. Yeah, I think absolutely the prawn dumplings could work quite well with this, but I think pear and cheese and cured meats I think is absolutely where this wine is at. Greg and Hayley are going the Scotch eggs. Good work. Yum. Meat and egg. What could be wrong with that? With onion relish as well. How fantastic. So I'm going to also remind those of you who have been in this conversation with me about Pinot Gris before, but also bringing it up for the new people who have joined us recently. I think this style of Pinot Gris is really interesting because it's got so much weight and it's got so much texture. It works fabulously with a lot of things that you'd think need a red wine. So as I've told people before, it was the winemaker at Josmeyer, I think, in Alsace. Anyway, Alsace winemaker. He said to me once, a long time ago, when I was working in retail, I was in my 20s. I didn't know anything about anything. Jeff and Sue are here. Woohoo! Welcome. I hope you've got a glass of wine already. He said to me, Pinot Gris is the red wine lover's white wine. And I didn't have any understanding of what he was talking about back then in my 20s, just trying to get my head around wine. But the longer I've been doing this, and it's been a very long time now, but the longer I've been doing this, the more I've understood what he meant. And I think it's that textural quality, it's the phenolics that you get in Pinot Gris, it's the fact that it's kind of savoury, but it's got some sweet notes. It's very complex, and it can work really well with lots of dishes that you'd assume would be more a red wine kind of a food, like, for example, pork. And I talked about sort of cured meats, ham, prosciutto, jamon, whatever language you speak, whatever kind of cured pork you're eating, the saltiness and the richness of the meat is going to work really, really well with this wine. But also things like getting told now that my connection's unstable. So if you're having trouble understanding me, or if I've got Now I can't speak because I'm worried that the thing's freezing. Anyway, if we're having trouble, hopefully it will rectify itself. Fingers crossed. Uh, Nareem is asking about how many cases you can buy. I will do an offer of this wine to you guys in the next few days. So I think, as I said, we didn't make very much of it in the first place, but we will make it available to you now that you've tasted it, because it is delicious and it's pretty special. And yeah, I think we can have a lot of fun with it down the track as well. Oh. Oh, good. You can still hear me. Good. Excellent. I'm still being told that my connection's unstable. So if you lose me, I apologize. I will email you an offer in the next few days. I absolutely promise. Or Paul and Rosie, are you asking for my email address, or you would like me to send you an email with an offer? I will definitely send you an email with an offer. My email address is really easy. It's just kate@moorooducestate.com.au if you need to email me. Zach and Jack, is it quite expensive to produce Pinot Gris this way? Why are so few wineries taking this approach? Okay. I think a lot of people don't know that Pinot Gris can do this. I think a lot of people planted Pinot Gris because they thought it might be the next big thing after Sauvignon Blanc, because it wasn't Chardonnay during the time that Chardonnay was very unpopular, because there was a trend, particularly in America, but also in the UK, that a lot of people were drinking Pinot Grigio, so light, low flavour, high acid, early picked, inexpensive Italian styles. So I think that a lot of people planted Pinot Gris to make sort of cheap and cheerful, easy drinking wine in a style that is sort of the complete antithesis of this. We started making Pinot Gris not because we planted Pinot Gris to make a cheaper wine. We didn't make Pinot Gris because we were trying to make a style. We started making Pinot Gris because we started taking fruit from other vineyards that were planted to Pinot Noir and Pinot Gris. And in fact, when we started working with those vineyards, and the Osborne vineyard was the first, and the Garden vineyard very soon after that, had Pinot Noir and Pinot Gris planted to the vineyard. We had made Pinot Gris for both of those, the owners of both of those vineyards, for themselves before, but Dad really wasn't enamored of the variety back then. And when we kind of had to think about, how do we want to make Pinot Gris and how do we want to handle this grape variety, it just so happened that I was starting down my path of wine education to study for my Master of Wine and eventually achieve that. But I also had become absolutely enamored with Italian wine. I was working in a retail environment at the time, a very high-end wine retailer in Melbourne in Toorak Village called Philip Murphy's. Some of you will remember that store, some of you won't. It was a great store. And when I went to work there, I came in as someone who was pretending to know a little bit about wine, but had come off the back of a degree in languages and theatre. And I thought I was going to work in this shop for 6 months, earn a bit of money, go travelling, get back to what I was really serious about. And all of a sudden I was surrounded by people who were passionate about wine, about a whole lot of wines from places that I loved, but I didn't know made quality wine, places like Italy and lots of parts of France. I mean, my wine experience before I started working in retail was really drinking stuff that Mum and Dad had bought, and Mum and Dad had some Bordeaux and a little bit of Burgundy in their cellars, champagne, and that was it from overseas, really. And then Australian wines from people that they were getting to know when we came back from the UK in the early 80s, before we bought Moorooduc and started growing our own grapes to make our own wine. So I, very early on in my time at Philip Murphy's, we did a big Italian wine expo on a Saturday. It was a huge thing, and I just fell in love with the wines and the people who were importing the wines at the time, who have become lifelong friends of mine. And one of the wines that just seared a memory into my brain, which I can still remember, is is a wine made by Silvio Yerman. It wasn't 100% Pinot Grigio, but it was Pinot Grigio with other grape varieties mixed together. I know, Shell, story time with Kate. You missed it. I know. And they were pouring the current release, and I looked at the shelf, and we had wine from the same producer, the same sort of cuvee blend of grape varieties, but it was a few years older. In fact, I think it was 4 or 5 years older. And I said to Michael, who was the importer of the wine, I said, why have we got those ones? And he said, oh, one of the previous wine buyers for the store bought it. Nobody sold it. It's been sitting there. I don't know what it's going to be like. And so after the Italian Wine Expo, I said to my boss, I'd like to buy a bottle of that wine. And they said, oh, we can't sell it. I know, Craig. We'll have to have Kate and Wine the musical. It would be fabulous. All singing, all dancing. Anyway, long story short, I know, long story long, but the end of the long story is that my boss sold me the wine for basically what they paid for it, because they couldn't sell it to anyone else, and said it'll probably be gone, but give it a go. And I opened it up that night, and I came back and bought the other 5 bottles off the shelf next day, and it just made me fall in love with high quality aged Pinot Grigio and other of those kind of very textural, savoury, non-fruity Italian white wines from up in the north. And we probably need to go on a little investigation of those wines at some stage, either via a guest wine in the box. We have had the Franz Haas Pinot Grigio in the past, which was pretty floral and green pear fruited. I might have to see if I can find something a little bit more challenging from the northern Italian white wine repertoire to throw at you in the not too distant future. Okay, questions that I have been ignoring while I've been telling my stories. Craig, are there many clones of Pinot Gris? That's another thing. There are many clones of Pinot Gris, Pinot Grigio, Craig, but in Australia, until very recently, we only had one. And that's one of the things, it's one of the myths about Australian Pinot Gris, Pinot Grigio, is that we've got a bad clone here in Australia. Now, it might not work in all of the sites, in all of the regions, but for the Mornington Peninsula and for the vineyards that we're growing it in, we think it works pretty jolly well. But you need to let it ripen on the vine for longer than any of the other white grape varieties that we grow down here. It takes ages for the flavour to come in. And this is why we have this constant kind of, it's 14% alcohol, but when it's young, it's quite tight and quite low fruit expression. We need to give it time to let it come out of itself. All of these things are things that people don't understand. And so I think partly at Moorooduc, we're just a bit stubborn. And we also, if we make a wine that we think maybe is going to be hard to sell, that we have a bit of affection for, which was certainly this wine, instead of kind of, just fire sailing it out somewhere where maybe no one will notice, we just stash. We've got a little bit of shed space. It's a ridiculous way to run a business, but we hope that in the long run it will kind of work out for the best. And I think that getting to drink this wine now is one of the really fun things. Okay, Nareem, thank you. I'm glad you like the stories. I sometimes think I get a bit carried away, and you have to tell me to stop if I'm going on too much. Anywho, Karen and Roz and Paul are suggesting it's a bit like aged Marsanne. And I think, we've talked about this before, that Chateau Tebilk Marsanne that you can buy from Dan Murphy's current release for not much more than, I think it's less than $15 a bottle. But for that wine to be really good, you need to put it in the cellar for 10, 15 years, which nobody does because everyone thinks it's just an easy drinking, early drinking wine style. Sharpie and Rod, the honey is coming up more and more, absolutely, as the wine opens up. And if you've been sitting with a little dribble in the bottom of your glass, like I have for a while, and you haven't freshened your glass, this is a good time to do it. With the older wine that we had last week, we discovered how much the wine changed when you gave the glass a little freshen. let's see how it affects this one. I think you'll find that it might close it up a little bit, but you'll get some different. There we go. The honey's gone away a little bit. There's more of that kind of toasty. It's almost like Parmesan rind. It really makes me think of Italian flavors, this wine. It's really super. Anthony and Brigitte, what wine? What wine needs lots of time? Chateau Tebilc Marsanne is the one I'm talking about, that needs time. And yes, it will age quickly in Queensland. I think that's what you were saying. I had a word missed out there, but I'm pretty sure that's you, and that's right. It'll evolve more quickly. Craig, it is medium acid. So yeah, it's got less acid than some of our Pinot Gris, and that was another reason that we thought it was going to be really hard to sell, particularly when it was young, because the phenolics had not come up properly and the richness of the fruit hadn't come through. So you just noticed that it was lower acid than you'd expect. You can feel a little bit of acid. So acid's a weird one. You can feel a little bit of acid in the side of the mouth. It makes my cheeks kind of tingle and makes the side of my tongue tingle a bit as well, and a little bit of mouth-watering character happens after swallowing it. But yeah, it's not high acid like a lot of other wines, and this is that whole concept of letting it get fully ripe. Yeah, it's also the way we make the wine is a patient way to make wine. And Cotty, I think it does. There are a lot of white wines that don't age because they're made in a very modern way and they're pushed to be ready to be in the bottle and ready to be drunk early. And so they don't get time to kind of find their Craig, you're hilarious. No, I'm not close to a courier. You should drink a little bit more slowly. You should always need to have a backup bottle. Come on. Don't drink next week's bottle. You need that for next week. But Cotty, yeah, I think there are a lot of white wines that don't age, and I think that particularly in this country, because so few people have cellars and so few people get a chance to taste wine with age, that when they do taste a wine with age, they're a little shocked by it because it's different, and they don't have anyone to kind of help them work through it. And if there's anything at all that I do on these sessions with you guys on a Thursday night, it feels a little bit like a therapy session sometimes with the wine. We get time to work through the wine and really give it a good seeing to. We get to look at it inside and out. We get to taste it without food. We get to taste it with food, all of that stuff. So I think that not all white wine ages. There are some surprising white wines that age really, really well. And I think the Marsanne, Chateau Tebilc Marsanne, not all Marsanne, again, Chateau Tebilc Marsanne made in an old-fashioned way. A lot of Rieslings from mostly South Australia, but quite inexpensive. Inexpensive Rieslings from South Australia can age brilliantly, but you need to have a decent cellar or at least somewhere cool under the house to chuck them. So, ready to drink then Kucha. That's absolutely right, Kay. And a lot of people think if the wine's not released, white wine, if it's not released within 12 months, 36 months of the fruit being picked, then there must be something wrong with it. And this is a myth that we are fighting against still at Moorooduc, and we work really hard to make sure that at least some people, i.e. you guys, know that these wines do age very well. Shell, I don't get paid public holiday rates to drink with you next Thursday, but I'll be here anyway, because what else would I be doing on a public holiday than having a glass of wine with my drinks with Kate buddies, hey? Negroni time, Craig, yeah. Well, if the wine's run out, it is Negroni week, so if you do need a little bit more alcohol in your body, then Negroni will get you there faster than a glass of Pinot Gris. Absolutely. Hunter Valley Chardonnay is known for dying one day after its fifth birthday. Absolutely, Craig. And that's the problem with growing Chardonnay in a climate like the Hunter Valley. They have to pick it early. They have to make it in a way that kind of gets it ready to drink early, and you enjoy the freshness and the brightness, but it doesn't have the phenolics, it doesn't have the structure, it doesn't have the longevity that I think that a cooler climate would bring to white wines like Chardonnay and Pinot Gris. We get to share a wine with the new king, Craig. Absolutely. So, okay, next week, Heytesbury Chardonnay from the Margaret River also ages very well. Yeah, Margaret River Chardonnay ages pretty well. Hunter Semillon is a completely different story, Nareem. I mean, Hunter Semillon is one of those classic wine styles that you really should buy and put in your cellar for at least 20 years before you, particularly now that they're under screw cap. Fabulous. Rob's back home tomorrow for you, particularly now that they're under screw cap. Fabulous. Rob's back home tomorrow. Deb, that's a tricky question. I don't know is the answer. I reckon you might want to keep a little bit for Rob, but maybe just drink it and buy him another bottle when he can, be bothered to be home. You snooze, you lose sometimes. That's a bit mean. It's it does stand up as a meal on its own. Absolutely, Zach and Jack. Yeah, Deb, I think Deb and Zoe, you should probably finish it tonight if it's slipping down nicely. I can probably help Rob out. What are we tasting? It's an older Robinson Pinot Noir, or is it a Chardonnay? Jeff, why don't I look these things up before I talk to you? While I'm looking this up, I'm going to multitask and talk to you about something else. So, Sharpie and Rob couldn't leave us until tomorrow. No, well, I'm here on my own tonight. I don't have Jill and Richard to help me with it. So if anyone wants to pop over and help. Chardonnay, Linda, thank you. It's an older Robinson Chardonnay, I think we have. Let me have a look. No, that's the photo app. Moorooduc home. Okay, while I'm looking this up, I'm also going to tell you that the following week, are we all supporting the only Melbourne tenner from the AFL? Peter is a Pies supporter. So my brother Peter is a bona fide Collingwood supporter. So he'll be supporting the Pies. Yes, thank you for. Hey Pete, how you going? We might have to have chicken pies or something with our Chardonnay next week to celebrate the footy grand final eve. But we're also mourning the death of our queen and the reign of our new king. So plenty of things to drink to next week. 2015 Robinson Chardonnay we're drinking next week. I will excellent with Sonia. Oh, good. Well done, Sonia. I will send you an email on Monday with some Swannies. Dad was a South Melbourne supporter, and then when they left Melbourne, he had to change his allegiances to St Kilda. So, I'm a Carlton supporter, so I don't really care. That's enough football talk for me for the year. Chardonnay next week. Enjoy. If any of you've got some Pinot Gris left over, enjoy. Go the Blues. They have the best coloured jumper, don't they, guys? They're very smart. Peter, enjoy a bit late. Don't have the wine. Oh, no. I'll have to get you a bottle of the wine later, Pete. It is a great pack, Miriam and Keely, and I think we're going to have lots of fun with that. So the following week, hang on. No, Linda, it's not 2015 Robinson Chardonnay next week. I take it all back. I'm Noir, Estate Pinot Noir, which will be delicious, and that will go very well with meat pies and sausage rolls, so we might have to go down that path next week. I'll think of something a bit more sophisticated for people who are not really into meat pies and sausage rolls. So 2019 Estate Pinot Noir next week. That's all right, Linda. It's all good. The following week, I'm going to be on a train, and the beautiful Craig has offered to do his Nebbiolo tasting. So let's see whether that works out. But if so, I will try and sign in, but I'm going to let Craig lead that one because I'll be on a train in the UK at silly o'clock in the morning. And then we'll be in Italy for the 2015 Robinson Chardonnay. See how much I love you guys and carrying my wine across to Europe with me. And the following week, if I can make it happen, we'll be having the 2021 Magic Stalks Shiraz. Sonia, this is every week. Every week we do this. We sometimes have a break if I can't make it or in between boxes. Often when we have a break for the new guys in between. So I will also be sending out a link and an offer for box 6 next week before I go away. Lots to do, Jeff. Lots to do. So box 6 will be offered very soon. But in between box 5 and box 6, we'll probably have a week off and maybe have a look at a cocktail or a mocktail or both, which was a bit of a tradition, but we haven't done for a while. So it might be fun to come back to that. I'll see how inspired I am. And I'll be jet lagged that week as well. So it'll be a good excuse for me to do something fun. A shell, a Nebbiolo or 2 in the cellar, under the stairs. Excellent. It's been lots of fun, guys. I will see you all again next week on the Queen's last public holiday. I will send you an offer for the Pinot Gris 2014. I've got so many emails to send you guys. So take care. I'm going to go and write myself some notes. Off to the Comics Lounge. Have fun, Sonia. Take care, everyone. See you later. Cheers. How do I finish this? Oh, there we go. There's my button. See you later.